our house sat with something that resembled human, and I broke an important rule. Daniel was a regular at our bar, visiting 2 or 3 times a week. Although friendly, he was quite reserved and didn't tell us much about himself. I knew that he had his own business, which seemed to be doing well, judging from his good quality suits and expensive-looking watches. There was no red flag about this man, as he never caused any trouble. Daniel was polite to everyone, and he also tipped well. So when he asked me to house sit, I agreed. He looked tired and asked for a double shot instead of his usual that night. When I asked what was wrong, he complained about his coming business trip and how he was worried about leaving his house for a few days. I suggested that he could hire someone to house sit, and that was when his eyes lit up behind the metal-rimmed glasses. "That is a wonderful idea, Emma," he said. "Say, how much do you make working here?" $20 per hour. Why? If you could take Friday off, I'll pay you $50 per hour to stay a night at my house. My eyes widened. It was almost ridiculous how much this guy was willing to pay to have someone look after his house. Daniel mistook my surprise as disappointment, as he immediately continued in an apologetic tone. What was I thinking? Of course it's going to take more to convince you to stay at my boring old house. How about $80 per hour? Daniel, you are not living in a palace or some kind of haunted house, aren't you? Daniel laughed softly. Oh no, not at all. It's just an ordinary house. You'll see there's nothing to worry about. It's just that I expect you to do a few things while you're there. Compared to what you're doing here, I'm sure it would be super easy for you. He said that in a very nonchalant way, like it was no big deal at all. Looking back, I should have been more suspicious and asked him right then about what he intended for me to do. It might have saved me from what was to come then, but I was blinded by the offer that seemed too good to be true. I told Daniel that he got himself a deal and that I would be at his house by 6 p.m. on Friday. Daniel's house stood in a nice neighborhood, not too far from my apartment. It was an ordinary 2-story house, a little old, but looked rather well taken care of. I found the key under the mat as instructed. As I entered, I immediately noticed that there were some lights coming from the living room. I also heard the low humming sound of a television, which was weird, since Daniel was supposed to leave for his trip hours ago. I made my way to the living room, and Daniel was there, sitting in a dark room illuminated only by the television screen, which was showing some kind of advertisement. "Daniel, I thought you left." As I walked in, he turned to look at me. "Yes, he left a few hours ago," he replied, and that was when I realized this man was not Daniel at all. He looked almost identical to Daniel, but thinner and messier. Daniel always dressed well, whereas this guy was wearing an old t-shirt, sweatpants, and some dirty indoor slippers. His hair was long and unkempt, and he didn't wear glasses, unlike Daniel. Something about him also felt off. His eyes were cold, almost emotionless. He also sat upright on the sofa, which was a weird pose to be in, while relaxing and watching some TV. "So sorry, I mistook you for Daniel. You must be his brother." I tried to hide my surprise. "Daniel hired me to house sit while he's away, so I didn't expect to see anyone here." He stared at me for a few seconds, as if he was sizing me up, then nodded. "Okay. I think Daniel left you some notes in the kitchen." The note was indeed on the counter. It read, "Emma, thanks again for doing this. I apologize for not giving you a heads up on my twin brother, Thomas. He will be here with you while I'm away. I totally understand that the situation is probably not ideal for you, but please don't worry about Thomas. He's a little weird, but actually very nice. As long as you follow my instructions, I guarantee that everything will go very smoothly on your side." The neighbor stumbled up the stairs, screaming. I swore I didn't have time to think. I just needed him to stop running and be quiet. It was horrible, and I never knew I could be capable of such a thing. My body moved by itself, as if it was controlled by a sinister force. I stabbed him in the back. The man fell forward onto the hallway's carpet. I screamed and dropped the knife. A woman was in front of the house when I ran out, possibly the neighbor's wife. She let out a blood-curdling scream as she saw me covered in blood. There was no use in trying to explain. I just hopped in my car and sped away as fast as I could. I didn't know where to go. I knew I couldn't go back home. The police would find me there. There was no escape this time. The woman saw me leave the house. The knife with my fingerprints was left there, and if the neighbor survived, he would tell the police I killed all those guys and tried to murder him too. And even then, he would be partially right. I did try to kill him. What was I thinking? I had been driving non-stop for 2 hours now, bawling my eyes out. I could go no longer. I just knew that Thomas would find me. I could feel his presence following me like an inseparable shadow. Even worse, when I looked in the rearview mirror, I could no longer see myself. There was only a black void where my face should have been, and it was staring back at me. Something told me that had I accepted his offer, this would have never happened. A notification on my phone went off. There was a text from Daniel's number. "Good attempt. I'm impressed." My heart sank. What should I do? Another message came through just now. "Have you made up your mind? This is the most important rule, and I cannot stress this enough. Do not let Thomas leave the house under any circumstance. No matter what happens, never give him permission or imply that he could leave. He might try to trick you. Don't fall for it. He won't try to leave without your permission, so there is no need to physically restrain him. Please be polite to Thomas. It will make everything much easier. Entertain him if you must. He won't ask for anything absurd, so please do what he wants to the best of your ability. You can help yourself to anything in the fridge. You don't need to prepare anything for Thomas, but please join him at the dinner table, as that's the polite thing to do. You can sleep in the guest bedroom. Close the curtains. Always lock the front door when you go outside. Keep the keys with you at all times. If you notice that outside is pitch black, don't go out. Trust me on this, please. Thomas won't harm you directly, but he will lie to get his way. Watch out. In the morning, please water my plants in the yard. If you sense that Thomas is angry with you, use this as an excuse to go outside and just go home. Leave the key under the mat if you do so. I'll pay you another $500 if you manage to keep the house clean and tidy when you leave. To compensate for your extra trouble, I left some extra money for you in the envelope. Good luck and stay safe." Beside the note was a little white envelope filled with banknotes. I gulped as I counted them. $500 in total. This guy was serious. Apart from keeping Thomas inside the house, the rest of the instructions are actually quite common sense. Locking the door, watering plants, sleeping in the guest bedroom. These were not absurd at all. Not worth the $1,000 on Daniel's side if you ask me. I still didn't understand why Daniel would need me to look after his house if Thomas was there already. Perhaps he didn't trust his own brother. Well, he did look like a deadbeat, to be honest. One question remained. Why was Thomas not allowed to leave the house? He was a full-grown adult who seemed to be functioning like a normal person. I thought about all the reasons that could explain this rule, and all the possible scenarios made me anxious. I should have trusted my instinct and left right then, but I didn't. Thomas did indeed creep me out a bit with his gaze. but he looked frail enough, and I thought I could handle him if he were to try something weird. In other words, greed got the better of me, and I ignored my gut feeling. It was a big mistake. When I went back to the living room, Thomas was still watching the television. "Hey, it seems we will be temporary housemates for tonight. That's fine by me." His eyes were still glued to the screen. I hesitated. I didn't want to share dinner with this guy, but I wanted to follow Daniel's instructions. "I'm having dinner soon. You are welcome to join me." Thomas turned to me and smirked. "I would be delighted to." To call the dinner awkward was an understatement. Daniel's fridge was a strange sight to see. Exactly half of it was filled with normal food like fresh fruit, pasta sauces and vegetables, while the other half was filled with several Tupperwares full of raw red meat, portioned into some kind of morbid meal prep. I reheated a box of frozen pizza from the freezer and saw Thomas pull out one of the meat Tupperware. He emptied the container onto a plate and set it down on one side of the table. He then sat down and stared at me patiently, as if he was done preparing his own food and was waiting for me to be done with mine. The awkward silence seemed to go on for eternity before the microwave gave a loud ding and I took my pizza out. "Enjoy your meal," Thomas said. For some reason, his voice sounded sinister. I dared not comment on Thomas's disgusting meal. We just ate dinner in silence. The sight of raw red meat with blood still oozing from it almost made me gag. But Thomas was eating the whole thing, like there was nothing wrong. The way he cut and dug his fork into the meat was precise and rhythmic, almost robot-like. I couldn't help but notice that he seemed to glance at my direction a lot. Not at me, but rather at my pizza. Finally, I gave in to his inquisitive gaze. "Would you like some of my pizza?" "Thank you, but no, I cannot eat that." "Are you, allergic to some ingredients?" "I guess you could say so. According to Daniel, there are a lot of things I should not eat," Thomas said. "But I would love to expand my diet. It is quite boring having the same meal every day. I heard there are many options around this neighborhood." "Well, I don't really know this area too well, but I'm sure there are some decent restaurants. Could we go to one of them?" His request caught me off guard. "Huh? You mean right now?" "I would like to go out, please." The sentence sent a shiver down my spine. I immediately thought of Daniel's instruction. While I didn't understand the context or any reasoning behind it, I didn't want to find out what would happen if I broke the rule. "Well, we've already had our dinner and I'm not from around here, so maybe it's better if you just ask Daniel to take you later." "Okay, that is a wise decision on your part." Thomas stood up and took his now empty plate to the sink. "If we are not going out, then we are watching television together." The way he demanded me to spend time with him almost felt like I was babysitting this full-grown man. While Thomas was calm and oddly polite, I inexplicably felt threatened by just having him sitting on the opposite end of the sofa, staring at the bright screen. Even without considering Daniel's ominous instruction, something told me that it was best to do what this man wanted. I regretted my decision to stay, but it was too late now. We sat in silence for a few minutes. I couldn't concentrate on what was on the screen. Thomas kept breaking the silence by asking me weird, personal questions, like where I worked, where my home was, and if I traveled a lot. His conversational skill was abysmal, and I was an unwilling participant, so the conversation didn't flow or went anywhere beyond 2 or 3 exchanges before the silence crept in again. I wanted to tell him off, but didn't want to appear rude, so I endured his strange questions. The 7 p.m. news started, and it was about a recent assault. The reporter was interviewing the victim, who was recovering in a hospital room. "This man lives in a weird-looking but spacious home," Thomas remarked. It took me a few seconds to register what he just said. I could not believe someone could be so sheltered and dumb. "That's not his home. That's the hospital." "Hospital," Thomas repeated curiously. "What kind of place is that?" I could not believe my ear. Was this some kind of dumb joke? I turned to see if he was smiling, but he was not. He just stared back at me, patiently waiting for an answer. Then it dawned on me. This man must be mentally challenged. That was the only explanation. That was why Daniel didn't want him to leave the house, out of embarrassment or in fear of his own safety. There was no way a man in his 30s wouldn't know what a hospital was unless he had some serious issues that affected his behavior and learning. I breathed in, switching to a babysitter mode. A hospital is a place where people go when they are in need of medical help. So if I'm in need of medical help, I will have to go to the hospital, which is outside. Thomas murmured to himself. Then he turned to me. "So if you kill me, I would have to go to the hospital. Is that right?" "That's ridiculous. I will not kill you." "Can I convince you then?" Again, what he said made my hair stand. His serious face made me feel like he was mocking me. "No, and you are not leaving this place." I stood up. Couldn't bear spending another minute with this guy. "I'm going to bed now. Good night." Thomas just stared at me blankly. "Okay, good night. Don't forget to close the curtain." He didn't need to remind me. I grabbed Daniel's instruction and headed to the guest bedroom, locking the door behind me. The room was too close to the living room for my comfort, and I could still hear a faint sound from the television. I looked outside the window and it was pitch black. Not having any energy left to deal with whatever was going on outside, I just closed the curtain and hid under the blanket. I considered leaving right then, but I would have to break rule number 6 and walk past where Thomas was, which I really didn't want to do. I didn't know what the heck was going on anymore, and I didn't want to risk it. I texted Daniel, telling him that his brother was crazy and that I would leave this place first thing in the morning. He didn't reply. Despite being nervous and scared, I dozed off eventually. I woke up again in the middle of the night to a loud thud and the sound of metallic objects clashing on the tiled floor. I heard a faint cry and looked at my watch. It was 3 a.m. I really didn't want to go outside to investigate, but I did anyway. Thomas was weird and unpleasant, but I still needed to check if he was all right. I tiptoed past the dark hallway. The television in the living room was still on, but Thomas was no longer there. I saw light from the kitchen, and as I walked closer, what awaited me inside stopped me in my tracks. The knife holder was flipped. Several knives were scattered on the counter as if there had been a struggle. Bloody handprints stamped onto the white marble surface. Behind the kitchen island, Thomas was lying on the floor with hands over his chest. There was blood everywhere. His white t-shirt was dyed red, and blood was spewing from his mouth. "Thomas, what the fuck happened here?" I rushed to him and pulled his hands off. The knife was still there, buried deep into his chest. "Help me. Emma," Thomas whispered. His face was as pale as paper. Someone broke in and they stabbed me." "Oh God. I'll call the ambulance right now." Panic swept over me. I grabbed the kitchen towel and put it over his open wound. Thomas grunted painfully, but he also looked confused. "Well, what are you doing?" "I'm stopping the bleeding, so stop talking." I pressed the wound with one hand and fumbled for my phone with another, clumsily dialing the emergency service. Number, you need to take me to the hospital. I paused. My hands were shaking, not because of the horrific scene in front of me, but because of the realization of what I was about to do. Looking at his injury up close, I couldn't help but wonder how this man could still be alive. The knife plunged directly into where his heart would have been. There was no way he would still be talking coherently, let alone having consciousness. Thomas noticed my realization, and he shifted his demeanor immediately. He grabbed my hand. His voice was no longer trembling with pain, but monotonic and emotionless, like it had been all evening. Emma, take me to the hospital. Can't you see I'm in immense pain? I will die if you don't take me to the hospital. No. I tried to shake my hand, but he tightened his grip. A dying man would not have strength to do this for sure. You lied, right? You did this to yourself. How the fuck are you still alive? Let me out. I need to go out. I promise I will spare you. Let go of me, you sick fuck. I broke free, but my back was against the counter and Thomas was in my way. I stared in horror as he slowly stood up in a puddle of his own blood, pulled the knife out from his chest and tossed it away. He smirked, but judging from the way he was glaring at me, I knew he was boiling inside. I had made Thomas very angry and he could barely contain it. You really are a resolved young woman. He just stared at me as I stumbled for the knife. Daniel made a correct decision this time around. Bad for me, but good for the rest of you humans, I guess. Stay away from me. I pointed the knife at him. He chuckled calmly, but then it was like a switch was flipped. Thomas grabbed the microwave and smashed it on the ground. If you just let me out, none of this would have happened. Give in already. You can't contain me forever. He went on and started destroying other kitchen appliances in a fit of rage. And that was when I noticed that his face was melting. Like candle wax, the color was drained from his face into some kind of thick, fleshy goop, combined with blood. And underneath was a face I would never be able to erase from my nightmare for the rest of my life. The face was dark, like a void of nothingness, with too many eyes and mouths that obviously belonged to different people scattered everywhere. Thomas, or whatever that pretended to be him, grinned with all of its multiple mouths and started to laugh. His horrible laughter echoed through the hall as I ran back to the guest bedroom. It was almost like the house itself was laughing. I locked the door behind me and covered my ears. I could hear Thomas wreaking havoc outside for the rest of the night. He also begged and demanded me to open the door several times, each time with different voices, but no way in hell I was going to comply. The night continued to torment me endlessly. I didn't know if I had passed out, but when I opened my eyes again, it was the next morning. Outside was bright out and the birds were chirping. I contemplated escaping through the window, but it wouldn't budge. My phone lost signal, and I had no choice but to leave the bedroom and confront that thing outside. The house was a mess. Wallpapers were torn up and furniture thrown around. Blood splattered on the wooden floor and seeped into the carpets. Thomas really gave his all when he was throwing his demonic tantrum. I tried to make a run for it to the front door, but I couldn't do so without passing the living room. The television was still on, playing static as it had been smashed with a lamp. And of course, Thomas was sitting there in the exact same spot. He was waiting for me. He was back to normal, if he ever was normal before, albeit looking exhausted in his blood-soaked clothes. "Good morning, Emma. Are you leaving already?" I'm just going to water the plants," I stuttered and quickly made my way to the door without turning my back to him. Thomas didn't move. He just smirked. It was a lovely evening with you. I look forward to seeing you next time. I swung the front door open and ran outside as fast as I could. As I stumbled into my car, the phone gave a loud ding as it regained the signal. There was a text from Daniel. He had replied to me since last night. I'm sorry you had to deal with Thomas, and I fully understand and respect your decision to leave. But please, don't forget to lock the door when you go out. I hope you remembered to keep the keys with you like I instructed. My heart stopped. I patted my shirt and pants pockets, but the keys were not there. I must have left them inside the guest bedroom with the rest of my stuff when I left, and I sure as hell didn't lock the door after me just now. I looked back at Daniel's house in terror. The front door was opened. Standing there in a blood-soaked t-shirt and sweatpants was no longer Thomas. It was me, smirking. I wanted to convince myself that everything was a bad dream and that I would wake up eventually, but obviously that was not the case. The blood stain on my clothes and continuous call from Daniel served as a reminder of what I did. For several days, I hid in my apartment, looking at people walking by outside and wondering if any one of them could have been Thomas. When I closed my eyes at night, I could still hear his horrible laughter echoing through the wall. I knew he would come for me sooner or later, but I didn't know in which form. He had my face now, and I assumed that he would be able to impersonate other people too after I had accidentally released him. I had unleashed something horrible due to my carelessness, but I didn't know what to do to fix it. Eventually, the call from Daniel stopped. I knew ignoring those calls was a bad move, but I really couldn't make myself pick up. I was too scared, but I couldn't hide forever. On the fourth day, I went back to work. Everything was normal, but I could barely concentrate. I kept looking at the bar patrons and my colleagues, asking myself if one of them could have been Thomas, trying to trick me. The busy and loud, bustling bar which I once loved had become so suffocating I almost cried. The anxiety was eating me alive, and I knew I had to do something. Daniel didn't come in. I called him after work, but nobody picked up. I almost had a heart attack when he walked into the bar the next night. Frozen in fear, all I could do was stare as he walked closer. Daniel was in his usual formal clothing, but he looked exhausted. His clothes were wrinkled and looked like they were put on in a rush. Was it really him? It had to be. Thomas didn't know where I worked. I told him I worked at a bar, but I didn't tell him the exact location. I didn't think he even knew what a bar was. While I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive Daniel for tricking me to spend a night with that demon, I was relieved to see him alive. Daniel, on the other hand, didn't seem so happy to see me. "Emma, do you realize what you have done?" he whispered through his teeth, leaning over the counter. "We are in deep trouble now. Thomas is gone." I didn't mean to release him like that. What should we do? The words flooded out as my repressed anxiety exploded. I could barely see his face through my tears. And he has my face now. Oh God, what even is he? Calm down for now. We can still fix this, but I need your help. Daniel looked around the bar as if to make sure that nobody was listening. We have to go back to the house. I need to show you something. We took my car as Daniel didn't bring his. I told my colleagues that I was leaving early and they seemed concerned, eyeing Daniel up and down suspiciously. They must have noticed that I was on the brink of breaking down and wondered if Daniel had anything to do with it. There were so many questions I wanted to ask him as we drove, but all I could do was quietly sob and try to focus on the road. Daniel didn't once try to console me. He just closed his eyes and seemed to be deep in thought. The street was brightly lit, but the house was dark. No lights were on. As we walked towards the front door, a middle-aged man emerged to view from one of the adjacent houses, as if he had been waiting for us to arrive. Daniel looked visibly annoyed. "Hey there, neighbor," the man said. Although he was talking to Daniel, his eyes were fixated on me. "I hope this is not a bad time, but we heard some noises from your house the other night, and I guess I just want to make sure that everything's all right." "Hey there, neighbor," the man said. Although he was talking to Daniel, his eyes were fixated on me. "I hope this is not a bad time, but we heard some noises from your house the other night, and I guess I just want to make sure that everything's all right." "Everything's fine," Daniel answered coldly. "Oh, okay, that's good to hear." Again, was glancing at me. "I don't know what you folks are doing there, and I don't want to meddle in your relationship, but keep it down, will you? My children are starting to ask questions." I was puzzled meanwhile. Daniel just smiled politely. "Please, mind your own business." We went inside the house, leaving the neighbor to awkwardly stand there. There was no sign of Thomas, only the mess of destroyed furniture and blood splatter he caused the other day. I tried not to look inside the kitchen. The image in my memory was vivid enough as it was, and I certainly didn't need the reminder about the frightening things that transpired there. Daniel didn't say anything else as he led me through the hallway. That was when I noticed a trail of blood leading to the basement door. The door was made of metal and looked to be unusually secure for an ordinary house. Daniel paused, and I could feel my heart beating so fast as though it was going to explode. I couldn't bear the silence anymore. "What's going on here? Say something." Daniel sighed. "The rules were simple, yet you managed to break them. People paid for your mistake, Emma. When you freed Thomas, everyone outside was fair game for him. He enjoyed the freedom for a while, but the hunger eventually kicked in." As he opened the door, a putrid stench of rot attacked me. I had a very, very bad feeling about this. "Watch your steps. You don't want to end up like them." The basement was brightly illuminated with rows of fluorescent tubes. Lying in the middle of a white tiled floor were 3 male bodies, each bloodied and battered. It looked like they had been dead for a few days, and there had been an attempt to dismember them, though unsuccessful. Several bloody knives and saws were strewn on the floor. Oh my fucking God. Did Thomas do this? I almost fainted, but Daniel grabbed my arm so that I wouldn't tumble down the stairs. As he helped me down, I noticed that apart from the bodies, the basement was filled with large refrigerators and butchering equipment. I couldn't help but think back to the meat in the fridge upstairs. Did I watch Thomas eat a person the other day? Like I said, he was probably hungry. Going outside must have been exhausting for him. Caught some humans, but didn't know how to prepare them. Daniel, myself, didn't teach me that. I messed up. He turned to me as I backpedaled towards the stairs. Thomas smirked. "It seems I talk too much and expose myself. Isn't that right, Emma?" I was so dumb, I fell for his trick. "You." Thomas let out a soft chuckle. The way he talked changed to the emotionless, monotonic voice that continued to haunt my dream. "If you run away now, I will hunt you down and eat you, Emma. I believe it is in your best interest to listen to what I have to say." I froze in place. This thing knew where I worked, and now that it could roam free, I knew it would not hesitate to kill me this time. I didn't have a choice after all. Thomas gestured to a small chair in the corner of the room. "Now please sit down, Emma." I did what I was told, as he tossed away Daniel's glasses and rubbed his eyes. About time. This face accessory is giving me a headache. I don't know why Daniel wears it. Humans are really weird. Where's Daniel? The real Daniel? Did you kill him too? My voice was shaking. I looked at the 3 corpses on the floor, but none of them looked like Daniel. No, why would I do that? That would be against the deal. Daniel was very mad at the mess you made. He tried to trap me, and when that didn't work, he tried to kill me. Not very polite of him. It was not my fault that he lost his mind and ran out into the void. Daniel's fine, you see. I hope he enjoys my old home. He might get a little bored though. I was on the brink of crying, but I needed to keep it together and buy myself some time. There were many objects in the room that could be used as weapons, but could this thing really be killed? Thomas just stared at me and added, in what I could only interpret as a morbid attempt to show empathy, "There is no need to be upset. I believe Daniel had expected me to eat you that night. Therefore, you just got your revenge." "What the fuck do you want from me then?" I screamed. "I want to offer you the same deal I offered Daniel years ago, with some minor adjustments." "The same deal. You see, I like being free, but I cannot roam this plane without a master. My deal with Daniel was terminated after he tried to kill me, so I figure you could be my new master," he said. "What? Listen to me first, Emma." Thomas interrupted. "This will be beneficial to you too. Daniel wanted wealth, and I provided that to him. I can do the same to you, be it wealth, fame, revenge, or power. You name it, and I will make it come true. But no more trapping me inside the house. I am not making the same mistake I did last time." "No, leave me alone," I yelled. "Think carefully," Thomas smirked as he gestured towards the corpses. "I can also make this go away. How will you explain this to the police without my help? It has nothing to do with me. I didn't kill them. You did. Oh, it was absolutely you." I diverted my attention from him to the corpses for less than a second, but a familiar voice immediately made me look up again. Standing there, still smirking, was myself. It was even worse than when he looked like Daniel. I never knew that my own face could be so evil. "I used your face to lure these men in," he said in my voice. It made me so disgusted I felt sick in the stomach. Male humans are surprisingly easy to capture, once offered a promise of reproduction. I'm sure the neighbor saw that too, as well as several other people at this bar establishment. This face is very convenient. It might be my favorite. How? I stood up. "I dare say that my imitation of you was excellent, to say the least." He started to laugh while stroking his long brown hair, mocking me. "You should really reconsider my proposal." "Fuck you." Something came over me. It must be the sight of my own face being used by this revolting demon that sent me over the edge. I didn't allow myself to think as I grabbed the closest knife off the floor and stabbed it right into his neck with all my strength. I have never stabbed a person, but it was nothing like what I expected. I saw the knife go into his neck, but somehow it felt as if I was stabbing air, like my knife was stabbing into something that wasn't there. Everything was so surreal, almost like time slowed down. Thomas fell to the floor. He was still laughing as I repeatedly stabbed his face, which gradually melted into nothingness. There was so much blood in the beginning, but then it stopped. His laughter also stopped. As I panted and looked down, there was nothing there but the black void. It was staring back at me. A loud gasp pulled me back to reality. The neighbor whom we had talked to earlier was halfway down the stairs. He was staring at me in horror, mouth agape with shock. "No, it's not human. This demon, I quickly stood up to show him, but it was no use. The void demon, or whatever it was, had taken the form of Daniel's face again. He just lay there in the big pool of blood, face stabbed to the point of being unrecognizable. No matter how you looked at it, he was dead. Fuck. From this man's view, I just murdered Daniel.